In this tutorial, I'll be showing you everything you need to know to get started with Phase 1's Capture One Pro. Hey there, Michael Voloshinovich here from VibrantShot. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/VibrantShot and also at VibrantShot.com. So in this tutorial, I'm going to be taking you through some of the main things that you need to know to start using Phase 1's Capture One Pro 7. I recently made the switch to Capture One Pro from Lightroom. I do still use Lightroom for certain things like managing my PSD catalog and things of that nature, but for the most part, I have switched to using Capture One Pro for all of my raw processing and tethered capture. A couple of main reasons I switched. The number one thing really is image quality. I think it's just far superior to what Lightroom offers out of the gate, so that's the main thing for me. A couple other features that I really like about Capture One, first of which is that you can maintain sessions, not just catalogs. So in Lightroom, it's primarily just catalogs. Here you can do both catalogs and sessions, and we'll talk about some of the differences between the two. Other thing I like is the customization of the interface, so I can set up different workspaces depending on my needs and really tailor the application to just display the tools that I need for a particular task. And lastly, it has some really nice color adjustment tools. So very intuitive tools for selectively adjusting certain colors, much simpler than what is offered through Lightroom. So those are the four key advantages for me personally. I did write a full comparison on f-stoppers, so the link to that article is in the description below. And the reason I wanted to create this video is because I think a lot of people download it as a free trial, they get kind of intimidated by the interface and they stop using it. So my goal here is to give you a quick rundown of everything you need to know to really get going with it and start using the application, and just to really show you that it's not as difficult as you might think. So I think the key thing to learning this application is to abandon your comparisons to Lightroom and treat it as a new application. So we're going to go ahead and get started by exploring Capture One's interface. So the interface is, again, pretty intimidating when you first look at it, but it's quite straightforward once you get into it. The first thing that you can do, and that's an important thing, is to set up various workspaces for specific tasks. And so we can go up here into Window, Workspace, and we can pick all of these different workspaces. So if we, for example, pick Simplified Tether Capture, you're going to see the interface change, and the options over here are much fewer than what they were before. You'll also notice that these panels have shifted around. So we have a couple of different panels here. If we just go back into our default workspace, basically what you're seeing here is this is the viewer panel, so that's where your image will actually display, or selected images. Down here is your browser, so it'll display all the different images that we have. On the left-hand side are all of the tabs, so these are all the tool tabs essentially. Now all of these are customizable, you can go through these. So the first one is basically just your library and sort of cataloging tab. Then there is a tethered capture tab, so you don't really need that if you're not shooting tethered capture. So you can actually remove that one. All of these can be removed by right-clicking and just say Remove Capture Tab, or you can go into here and say Remove Tool Tab and pick the tab you want to remove. You can also move all of these around. So if I want my tethered capture to be the first thing, I can hold down the Command or Control key and just move it around and drop it somewhere else. So all of these kinds of things can be customized. Now within each tab as well, you can add additional tools. So we can go into here, right click and say add tool. So let's say over here we want to add, well, we have levels adjustment, we have curves, so let's be creative here. Let's say lens correction. So we can add our lens correction over here and have it within our exposure tab. And if we want to remove that at any point, we can just go in and say remove tool and then remove the lens correction tool. So as you can see, you can customize the tabs and you can customize the individual tools within those tabs. You can also customize the top bar here. So we can add or remove features. We can right click on the bar, say customize toolbar, and drag or remove different options. So if we want, for example, composition mode, we can just drag it into here and it will be available for us in that particular workspace. Now, once you're happy with your workspace, you can go into Window, Workspaces, and save it. So you can basically save all of these different templates. And there's a lot of them pre-built for you. I've got one for myself here that I've called Culling, which we're going to be looking at as we actually evaluate some images. But the main one that you're going to start off with is probably going to be default. I believe the application ships with a simplified interface. So if you are not seeing all of these options that we have here, just go into Window, Workspace, and select Default. Now, all of these tools are pretty similar to what you would see inside of Lightroom. I mean, you're really not lacking in any of these features, and we'll sort of touch on them as we go through. But essentially, you're going to start off here in your library section. That's where we're going to create our session or our catalog, and we're going to start importing files. We've got our color adjustments, where you're going to be doing white balance adjustments. You've got a color editor, which is fantastic. You can do your black and white adjustments here. There's also a black and white adjustment tab that is designed specifically for working in black and white. There's an exposure tab, so here you can set up your exposure settings, increase, decrease exposure, contrast, brightness, saturation, and also work on shadow and highlight recovery. We've got lens corrections here as well, so all the typical stuff. It will load in the profile of your lens and allow you to fix distortion, sharpness, and also vignetting. Some crop tools, so this will allow you to fix keystone problems, rotate your image, straighten your image. We've got some navigation, so here you can do sort of minor adjustments here. This is like a fine-tuning sort of section. They call it details. So noise removal, moire, spot removal, all those kinds of tools that you would expect are there for you as well. Local adjustments allows you to mask in certain areas and create multiple adjustment layers. This is a really nice feature of Capture One as well. In Lightroom, it's a lot more difficult to manage those layers. Here, it's pretty simple to manage the layers because they're just listed like they would be in Photoshop. So you can create a new layer, make your adjustment, create another layer, make another adjustment, and toggle in between those different layers very quickly. We've got some sections here on, you can create presets, view metadata. Process recipes are basically ways to output your images. So this I find is the best way to set up all of your outputs. That includes outputting to Photoshop. For me, when I first started with this, I actually had trouble figuring out how I get my image into Photoshop. And for me personally, I think creating process recipes is the easiest way to do that. So we're going to touch on that as well. And there's some batch tools here also. Now you can add more tools. There's a few other tools that you can, add tool tab. There's a few other ones, so like I mentioned, there's a black and white one, which is designed specifically for working with black and whites. So that kind of gives you an idea of how we customize Capture One. So again, if at any point you have a tool that you need that's not showing here, you can right click on the bar here and say add tool, and you can add it, or you can always go back to Window, Workspace, Default, and that will bring in the workspace that you're seeing now. We can also customize the positions of these guys here. So if we're shooting capture, if you're shooting tethered, for example, if we set it to simplified tethered capture, you're going to see the browser is going to go on the right-hand side. So all of the images as we shoot them are going to populate down the side, and we're going to have a nice tall vertical window here for our main image. So again, it's really useful to switch around these different workspaces depending on what you're working on. So let's go back into our default workspace, and the next thing we're going to do is look at how we set up a session or a catalog and get images into Capture One. So Capture One ships with two main options as far as maintaining libraries. You have catalogs and sessions. Catalogs are more along the lines of what you're accustomed to inside of Lightroom. Basically, it's just a large collection of images that you can filter, maintain, put into additional collections, and essentially it's just a big catalog of images. Now, sessions work a little bit differently. Sessions are more transactional, and so if you're working on client jobs, sessions are really nice because they allow me to create a new session, work on that session, and then essentially, once I'm done with it, I move on and just forget about it. I don't have to have it in my catalog because odds are I'm not going to come back to it anytime soon. And the great thing about sessions is that they maintain their own sort of space in the file system that can be moved around wherever you want to. So with your catalog, normally if you've got images in that catalog, if you move the images, then the catalog is going to get broken and you have to re-import those images because the catalog can't find them. With sessions, again, it's just one sort of transactional block. So, for example, if we go into here, we can see this is what a typical session looks like. So we've got a session trash, we've got capture, which is whenever you have a tethered capture session, you're going to have a capture folder where all of your captures are going to go into. You've got an output where all of your exports are going to go to, so these would be your PSDs or TIFFs or JPEGs, whatever you're outputting. And you've got select. So if there's stuff in the capture folder that you really like, you can dump it in the selects folder and easily find those top select images. In addition to that, you'll find this editorial look katie.cosessiondb. So this is actually an existing session I have that we recently shot. And so this is the actual session file. So you can open up that session file right inside of Capture One, regardless of where I store this particular session content. And once it does, it will open up my session just like it would a normal catalog. All of my settings and everything are still stored in there. But the great thing again is that it's very portable, and I can move it to a backup drive or go from my capture drive to my working drive once I get it back to the office. A lot of flexibility, and if you're shooting tethered, you're definitely going to want to shoot to a session and not a catalog. So let's go ahead and actually start working with these. So what we can do is if we want to create a catalog, just go into this plus icon. So we're in the library tab now. We're going to say new catalog, and we can set up our catalog. So let's call it demo portrait catalog. And we're probably not going to use a catalog because we're going to work with sessions here today, because I think those are kind of the different thing. With Lightroom, you're probably used to catalogs already. So specify the location where you actually want to create that catalog. And I generally recommend not having open in new window checked off. If you do, it will open up a new window, and then you'll have two windows open sometimes. And especially when you're shooting tethered, it gets a little bit confused as to which one is the active window, and your tethered capture may go to the wrong one. So I always recommend just unchecking that, in which case it will replace the active session or catalog with the current one. So basically you'll start working in this one instead of whatever you had open. So we're going to click OK. That's going to create our catalog for us, and then we're essentially ready to import images into that catalog. To import images, we're going to click on this little import icon, and then from here we're going to specify a location of where we want to import from. So let's go ahead and pick a folder. So here we've got a couple of portraits that I shot for a fashion, portrait, and beauty course over at RGG EDU. So we're going to use those as our sample images. So I'm going to go ahead and open that location. And basically it's just going to list the contents of that particular folder. And this is sort of our source. So whatever we want to actually select, we can hold down the Command or Control key and click down on the images. If we wanted to import everything, we can just click down on the first one, scroll to the end, hold Shift, and it will select everything for us. Now, a couple of different things that we can do within here. We can specify where we want to store the files. And this is important because if you select current location, it won't move the files. So wherever those files are located right now, it's going to keep them there and just link them into the catalog. Obviously, if you're copying from a memory card, probably not an option you're going to want to use. Another option you have is inside the catalog. And if you pick inside the catalog, what it will do is it'll actually embed the files into the catalog file. So this catalog file, you can imagine it getting very large, up to gigabytes and gigabytes, because all the files are embedded in that one file. Now, the problem with that, obviously, is that you can't get to the individual NEF files out of your file system. You can only access them through Capture One. So for me, I don't find it to be the best option. I like to be able to kind of just link to those files as opposed to have them all embedded into one massive file. It also makes for backup issues as well. So if I've got a 200 gigabyte file that changes by 1 gigabyte and I'm syncing that between drives, I now have to back up all 201 gigabytes, even though only 1 gigabyte changed. So I don't really recommend using that option. The other thing you can do is just choose a folder. So specify a folder you want Capture One to copy the images from the source to the destination, and then create the link for the catalog. So that's generally what I recommend there. As far as naming goes, you can see it's disabled right now. If we change it to inside catalog, we can specify some naming conventions for our files. And then that's basically all you really need to know for this. There's some more advanced stuff in here, but I think that's really all you need to know. So basically then just click import images, and it's going to import those into your catalog. Let's go ahead and look at sessions though. So I'm not going to use the catalog, I'm going to create a new session. So same process, I'm just going to say new session, and I'm going to name this session demo portrait RGG EDU, and that should be good. So type, you can specify tethered or untethered. So if you're shooting tethered, select this one and it will create a captures folder as well for you. So it's the same folder structure that you saw a little bit earlier that I showed you. If you're not shooting tethered, you're just going to select untethered, and what it's basically going to do is it's going to put all of my images into a folder in this path / demo portrait RGG EDU. So all those the files are all going to end up in there, and then we can move them amongst the selects, output, and trash folders afterwards. So again, I don't recommend opening in new window, especially if you're shooting tethered, so just keep that unchecked. Again, clicking OK, going to create our new session for us, and it's going to replace the active catalog with our new active session. So now let's go ahead and import those same files. So we're going to grab all of them. Now here, it's going to store files in session folder. So it's going to copy them from our source and drop them into our session folder. Let's go ahead and click import there, and it's going to start to import those into our session here. So now that our import is completed, our next step is generally going to be to review these images and pick which ones we want to work on. Now within your left-hand side over here on your library tab, you can actually manage all of this stuff here. So if at any point you need to change things around, move things around, that's where you're going to go to do everything related to that particular session and how it organizes files. Now at any point you can also open the session. So if you wanted to open that co-session.db file that we talked about earlier, you can always go to File, Open, and it will open up that session for you depending on where you stored it. It will also show you a bunch of recent sessions over here as well. So just click on the drop down and you can pick and jump between those different sessions whenever you need to. You can also select files and drag them. So if we want to grab these guys here and move them to the selects folder, we can just click and drag and just put them wherever we want, trash folder, whatever it might be. Now when it comes to culling, what I like to do is I like to have a different workspace for that, so I don't really like to be distracted by all this other stuff, and I want my layout to be a little bit different. So I'm going to go ahead and select this culling workspace, and as you can see, it's just going to put my images on the right-hand side. Now I want to see these a little bit bigger, so I'm just going to click on this little guy over here, and we're going to just scale these up. So something like that, so we can fit 2 images in one row. So essentially what we're going to do here is, generally my process is I just go through the images and I start looking at them and assigning them ratings based on, how much I like the image. Now, over here, if you ever want to zoom, you can just do that using this slider here. So if we need to zoom in. Now with these particular looks, we were shooting with a fairly shallow depth of field. So one thing that often happens is we tend to miss focus on these. So one thing I really like about Capture One is it has this focus masking tool. It's actually a tool that's built into their Phase One cameras as well, and so they've included it in here, and it's a really nice feature. And basically what I can do is I can really quickly just make a pass and going through these images just to see which ones are sharp enough. So this image here, for example, just by looking at this, I can see that the focus mask is really not looking too promising on the eye. So we can just zoom in here using Command+ to verify whether or not it's sharp. And in this case, it is not actually. The eye is moderately sharp up here, but it's not great. And so for me, that pretty much quickly tells me that I can eliminate this image. Another option you have to check focus, and this is really useful I find when I'm shooting tethered as well, is this loop tool. So if we bring that up and we actually hover over the eye, it will zoom in at 100% and show us how it's looking. So this one, it's not too bad, but it's not as sharp as I'd like to see it. And so as we go through these images, I can really quickly say, okay, this one's out of focus. I'm going to give it a 1. I know full well that I'm not going to use it if it's not in focus. And I can kind of keep going through and just verify with all of these, are they in focus? This one, again, is probably sort of borderline. This one here, let's see how it's looking. So again, it's not too bad, but it's not great. So that one might be one that I would discard. And again, it's just a good, quick way to check the focus, and it is quite accurate. So with this one here, if we go in and just remove the focus mask, we can see that the eyes are perfectly sharp, so that's definitely an option for us to use that image. So it's a really nice tool that I like to kind of just, whenever I'm shooting these shallow depth of field looks, turn it on, make a quick pass, and eliminate whatever obviously I can't use because it's out of focus. So what I generally do, like I said, I go through these images and I just kind of assign them a number based on how much I like the look. So maybe this one, let's say I'm not a huge fan of it, I'll give it a 2. The next one here, we'll also give it a 2. This one, we gave it a 1 because of the focusing issue. This one, maybe I don't mind it, so I'll give it a 3. This one, let's say I give it a 4. This one a 4. Now between these two, I probably like the second one, so let's say I give that one a 4. I'll go back and turn this one off. This one here, I think we had some focus issues on that one, so let me just give that one a 2. It wasn't ideal. And let's say I like this one, and the next one. So I'll give those 4s. Now this is just a subset of all the images we shot that day, but I don't want to have to go through 100 different images with you today because that will bore you to death. So we've got some images that I like here. What I tend to do after that is I tend to filter them down. So I'll go into here and pick a filter. So this is, if you ever want to filter, just click on this little 3-dot icon over here. I'm going to filter everything that's 4 stars or higher. Let's close that up. And now if I want to kind of get down to 1 or 2 images that I like, I'm just going to select all of these and I'm going to hit the plus key. And that's going to mark them in green. So these are going to be my sort of, potential options that I'm going to evaluate. What we can do here, we don't really have like a survey mode like Lightroom has. So what I tend to do is just go ahead and create a smart album. So we go into the session album section. I can say create a smart album and we'll call this Katie Portrait Survey. So I'm sort of simulating almost the survey mode that we have inside of Lightroom. And we're going to give it a preset that it's anything that is marked in green. So we're going to click OK there. And now that's going to contain all of my my images that I marked in green. So basically, let's just go into that one here. So that's showing us our 5 images. And what we can do now is I'll generally kind of go into these 2 and maybe select them and see, which one do I like more. Let's just zoom out on both of these here. And so between these 2, I kind of like the second one more. So what I'll do is I'll take the first one and just mark it in yellow, and it will get removed from my smart album. And then I'll kind of go to this next one, and this one, and this one. So which ones do I like? Between these 2, maybe I like the second one a little bit more, so I'll throw this one out. You can also select an image, and if you hit the star key, so that will mark it in yellow. So that's going to knock that one out. And so now let's say we have these 2, and these are the ones that we want to use. So we've gone ahead and picked our images. Next thing we're going to do is do a little bit of raw processing on them, and then I'll show you how to get them into Photoshop using process recipes. So before we start on actually working with these images, let's go back and select our default workspace, because now I just want to go back and have my full feature set. So with that enabled, I'm just going to zoom out on these 2 guys here. At any point, if you don't want the browser anymore, you can also hide it. So you can just go into View and then say Hide Browser, and that's just going to take you into looking at one particular image in the viewer only. Let's go back and show the browser. Now another thing you can also do is launch the viewer as a separate window. So if you want this guy, if you've got 2 monitors and you want it in a separate window, you can also load that in, and then you can have the browser essentially fill the entire other screen. So a lot of different flexibilities there as far as how you view some of these different things. So with our image selected, I'm just going to touch on some basic options over here. I'm not going to go in depth on all of these different adjustments because there are many of them, and essentially we would be here for like 2 or 3 hours, and I don't think you want to watch me do that. And all of them really are fairly self-explanatory once you get into it. So with, for example, something like white balance, we can go ahead and sample just like we did in Lightroom. There's an option, there's like an eyedropper, same thing you have here. Now in this case the background was not neutral gray, so that's why the white balance is off. If at any point you want to go back to the original, you can just click on this little revert icon and it's going to take you back. So just use this little arrow. If you want to reset all adjustments on a particular image, click on this arrow up here. That's going to reset everything. If we want to, for example, adjust the color balance, is really just color casting. So if we kind of nudge this, you can kind of see it going and creating a color cast in different directions. And so again, if I kind of mess that up and it looks really bad, I want to go back, just click the revert there, and that's going to cancel everything out. So next tab is our exposure settings tab. So here, if we're not happy with our exposure, we can adjust it. In this case, I think I exposed this pretty well, so we don't really have to do much there. If, for example, we want to rescue some of these shadows, it's the same process that you would use inside of Lightroom. So you've got shadow and highlight sliders. Now, one thing you'll notice is that you can't take them in the opposite direction. It's purely a recovery tool, so you can't boost highlights or shadows through this. So that's one thing that I kind of wish that we could do, but nevertheless, not a huge sticking point. So if we want to recover our shadows, we're just going to slide this until we're happy and we've got enough detail. In this case, I would just want to reveal some of these bits of detail in the hair here. So maybe pulling it to something like 14. Now, one thing that you may be used to in Lightroom, which is double-clicking on the title, and that resets things. That doesn't work here, but what you can do is double-click on the actual slider, and that will reset it as well. So just a useful little tip for you. And so maybe we'll just kind of recover a little bit of highlight and a little bit of shadow. And so you have all the other adjustments here. You've got levels, you've got curves, so clarity adjustments, all the typical stuff that you would expect to see. Vignetting is actually down here, so it's like down at the very bottom inside of Lightroom. Here you'll actually find it in this exposure tab. Now again, that's something that you can move anywhere you want. So it doesn't have to be in this area. You can remove it from this particular tab. Again, fully customizable. Now here we may want to, for example, fix the vignetting caused by the shallow depth of field. So the way it works here is it's going to pick your lens profile, but it's going to zero out all of your adjustments by default. So if we want to fix, for example, distortion, I can slide it. Now in this case, not a lot of distortion correction going to happen here because it was a prime lens, so it shouldn't really be distorting much of anything. But if I wanted to, for example, fix some of the vignetting that's happening here, we can specify how much correction do we want to see. Maybe we don't want to go to 100%. Maybe we just want maybe 50% correction. If we want to go to 100%, of course, we can just keep sliding this and it's going to try to fix it completely. And I do like that option that we can just sort of control, how much of the profile correction gets made, because sometimes I don't want to fix the entire vignetting. Sometimes I do want to just be somewhere around 50%, and that's good enough for me. Cropping as well, same kind of idea. You can just select your crop and we can drag in from the corner here and crop this down as we need to. So it's going to display something like this, but once we actually get out of the crop tool and start picking something else, let's say we go back to our pointer, it's going to close everything in. So if you're wondering why it's kind of sticking in this mode, just pick your pointer tool up here and it's going to go back and just show you the cropped version. You can also fix, keystone adjustments. You can use the level tool, so there is a little leveler that you can use for this. You can also access a lot of these tools up here, so you can rotate stuff. You can have all your crop constraints up here as well. So all these different tools are available to you as shortcuts up at the top for these sort of standard things. Nothing that we need to do there. I'm not going to create any local adjustments in this case because, again, I don't want to get into, I think, too much detail. But let's just take a quick look. I'll just show you what you can do with these local adjustments so you have an idea of how they work. So we're going to just create a couple of adjustment layers, and essentially you're just going to click on the plus icon, and we're just going to call it, background or something. Or let's call it back because there's already a background. And now what we can do is just grab our brush and we can start masking. So you've got a couple of different brush options. You've got the brush itself, you've got gradients as well, and you can erase the mask, and you can also control the size. So if you want to, increase your brush size, decrease your brush size, how soft and hard you want it to be, and what the opacity is, all of that stuff you can control through here. And so basically you're just going to brush through a particular area. Let's just say it's something like that. And you can control how this mask gets displayed as well. So you can click right here and say always display mask, in which case it will just show it for you, or only display it when we're drawing, or never display it. So this is kind of the default value right here. And then we can, for example, adjust the exposure on this particular side if we felt that it was too bright. So that's really how you do the local adjustments. You can create as many of these layers as you want, and then very easy to just kind of jump between them and adjust all the different things if you decided that you want to change something. So I think much better organized than what Lightroom has. Next thing we're going to look at is how we actually get our pre-processed raw file into Photoshop. So for that, I recommend using the Output tab. Again, if it's not showing up, go into Window, Workspace, and select Default, and then it will definitely show up, or just right-click here and say Add Tool tab and make sure that Output is selected. So we can go in here and create a new process recipe. I have this one here for PSD 16-bit. Now, if I wanted to create one for 8-bit, I can just go into here. We'll just call it PSD 8-bit. And then we're going to specify some details for that. So let's say we want our format to be PSD, in 8-bit in this case, Adobe RGB, specify a resolution, you can scale it however you wish, and we're going to say open with Adobe Photoshop CC. So once it completes the output, it's going to open it up with Photoshop CC. Then again, we can specify how we want it to name these files. It's going to store the files in the output folder of our session. So again, it's organizing everything really nicely. It's good, we've got our captures folder, our selects folder, there's an export folder in there, or sorry, output folder. That's where it's going to dump the file. And again, that's really useful because it's very easy to find all of the PSDs and output files that you have because they're all in one particular folder. And then once you're ready, essentially just go ahead and select the ones you want to export. So we can select multiple process recipes at one time. In this case, I'm just going to say open it with an 8-bit PSD. I'm going to hit process. It's going to churn through, convert it into a PSD file, and it's going to launch Adobe Photoshop for me and take me into editing. So basically from here on out, standard process for working with Photoshop. Now obviously, unlike Lightroom, it will not auto-populate back into here. Capture One does not support PSDs. So for that reason, I do still use Lightroom just to manage my PSD catalog at the end. But other than that, Capture One is driving everything else. So I hope that gives you a good idea of kind of the typical flow that you would take with an image, starting at the session or catalog creation phase, setting up Capture One, importing your files or tethering those files, and then working with them, culling them, and finally getting them into Photoshop. So again, I do recommend checking out Capture One. Once again, see the full article from Fstoppers down below. It's definitely a different application. There's a little bit of a learning curve there, but really I think for some of the advantages that it has, especially if you're a working professional, it really is a great product. So take a look at it, and also be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel below so you don't miss any other videos like this, and also follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/vibrantshot. Bye for now.